very much. Good evening, everybody. Hello. It's so nice to see so many friends. Hello. We are delighted to see everybody here tonight and delighted to host this event. I get to be very brief so that we can get to other people that you really want to see. And first, I'm really excited to introduce a longtime friend of mine, Dane Snowden, Chair of the Board for SMYAL and Chief Operating Officer for NCTA. Dane, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Mark, thank you very much for hosting us. I actually remember when Mark was an intern, so he's come a long way and the hair has grown as well. We're very excited to be here. And on behalf of the Board of Directors of SMYAL, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight. They gave me a whole bunch of things to say, and so I'm not going to be able to say all of it because I want to get Senator Booker on here, but I did want to, of course, thank Hogan for hosting us, and also some of our event sponsors, Jones Day, Lisa Brown, Chuck Keller. I'm missing some. Hold on for a second, apologize, this paper is sticking. D.W. Tunage, Brian Brainey, and Pedro Lay, who Pedro's in China right now, Kurt Wimmer, and Brian Smith. Thank you all very much for helping us pull this event off. And I would say we would not be here without the work of the staff of SMYAL. They are phenomenal, and particularly Jason Laney. So please give them a big shout out for a lot of good work. Thank you, Jason, very much. I want to thank all of our committees. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Thank you very much for that. And I'm also here to say a big thank you to an organization, the Federal Communications Bar Association, which I happen to be a member of. And we're very thrilled to be selected last year for their charity. And they raised over $100,000 for SMYAL. And I wanted to bring up the co-chairs, Rachel and Sean. Where are you guys? Rachel and Sean, if you can come up, we want to show our appreciation for you. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our phenomenal, fantastic programs director at SMYAL. Come on, AJ, come on down.
Thank you, and good evening to each and every one of you. So I have the amazing opportunity to introduce one of our young people who actually is not just a anymore, because as of Monday, they are officially a full-time staff member at SMYAL, and they will definitely share with you about how that came about. So it's very interesting that we have Lawyers for SMYAL happening this week, while we also are in activist camp this week. How many of you all are familiar with activist camp? Then I kind of, sort of, yeah. So here's the quick and dirty, right? Activist camp is 4 days and 3 nights where we take a group of young people away to enhance their activism skills and to help them to be able to create campaigns and demonstrations that they would like to do in their communities and in their schools. This year we have 23 young people as we speak at the 4-H Club in Chevy Chase, Maryland, that has a talent show starting at 9 o'clock. And they are excited. They've been laser tagging today. We've had 2 days of intensive workshops. But the goal is to be able to provide young people with these opportunities. Did it stretch our budget? Yes. Did we intend on having 23 young people? No. But are we going to turn any young people away? Absolutely not. Which is why your help is important, because for the donations and the gifts that you all are able to give, it allows for us to continue to say yes to young people when they come across our door. So with that being said, I will introduce the phenomenal Addison, who came to SMYAL as a youth, transitioned to a youth fellow, and is now a full-time staff person as our HIV outreach coordinator. Come on, Addison.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, my name is Addison. So as a young person, having a voice is always challenging. Our voices tend to be overshadowed by many. And SMYAL's annual activist camp gave me that opportunity to have a voice. Seeing young folks leading and facilitating workshops was one of the first times I really saw, like, oh, young people can do this. And I was a freshman in high school, so I was like timid and scared, and I was definitely not the person standing in front of you today. But I participated extensively. I was raising my hand, answering questions, making sure I knew what was going on. And it helped me become the leader that I am today. And with those skills that I learned that year, understanding my rights as a youth activist and as a student, I started the GSA at my high school. But I didn't want to stop there. I decided that I wanted to continue to go to activist camps. So the next 2 years after that, I decided to become a facilitator, and it was exciting. It was a leadership position that I wasn't expecting to be in. And with that, I saw a chance to do the same thing that those young facilitators did for me. And I wanted to show the youth that you can have a voice and that your voice does matter. And with that, I took it to the point where I got a youth internship. And it was so exciting to be able to show young people like, hey, you can do this too. And I've had youth come up to me and say like, you inspire me. So with that, it made a difference in their lives just as much as it made a difference in mine. And so with those skills that I learned, I wanted to show young people that they could do the same. And Activist Camp gave me that chance to really do so. And so with that, I wanted to say that just as us at Youth Activist Camp, we can be leaders, lawyers or not. So, oh no, I messed up my sentence. But no, I wanted to say that as a youth activist or a lawyer, we all want justice. There we go. But thank you all. And I really appreciate you all coming out as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. And so without further ado, please help me in introducing and joining with us Ari Shapiro and Senator Cory Booker.
Thank you, Delphi. Senator Booker, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Listen, the first question I want to ask you before we get to Russia, before we get to Kavanaugh, and we will get to those, I mean this in the nicest possible way. Why are you here? I mean, we're all people who support and believe in SMYAL. You're a senator who speaks up about LGBT issues at moments that you don't have to, at moments that maybe you haven't even been asked about it, at Secretary Pompeo's confirmation hearing. And so this is an organization that we all support, believe in, and want to give to for different reasons. You are giving your time on a very busy day to be here and help support SMYAL. Why?
I just want to be very frank. So I grew up in New Jersey different. I grew up in different. We were the first Black family to move into a neighborhood. And I was lucky. It was a nurturing neighborhood, great place to live in. But, you know, you still have challenges being different. And it was a period of my life, I think I got some of the best blessings to learn empathy and compassion. And it always made me sensitive to that. And when I was a young man, I met a woman named Barry Mattis, who was on the board of the Hedrick Martin Institute and the Harvey Milk School. And I thought I knew a lot about LGBTQ issues. I became an activist in college. And the way I became an activist was sitting on a crisis hotline and taking calls from teenagers who were coming out or who were afraid to come out, and listening to the challenges. When I studied overseas, a dear friend committed suicide. And by the time I came around and met Barry, and she invited me to come to this incredible youth center, and I met the students that were there. I've been visiting schools all over the country and all over New Jersey. They just blew me away. And they told me more of their truth about their lives, about being kicked out of their parents' home for who they were, about being bullied, about being homeless. And I just committed myself that whatever I do in my life, I'm going to try to make sure that this nation is who we say we are. And the data is not as compelling, frankly, as the stories of a lot of the young people that I've gotten to know. But we know that, that LGBTQ kids are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than straight kids, that they're twice as likely to be bullied. We know that about 1/3 of LGBTQ kids are bullied. About 13% every day will report not going to school because of fear. And so when I worked at another place called Covenant House when I was mayor in Newark, and was surprised even to see when I sat in circles with these kids how many were LGBTQ and the stories they had to tell. So I believe the most valuable natural resource this country has is not oil, gas, or coal. It's the genius of our children. And when I see children who have so resilient, learn lessons in compassion and empathy, that so want to serve this world, that so have vision, so have spirit, have so much to offer. In fact, this country needs them. I dedicate my life in every way possible to trying to be a part of the LGBTQ community and really focusing on youth and kids.
Well, thank you.
And then the last thing I'll say is, and then I have one of my best staffers, part of my senior leadership team, Adam Topper back there, who's now beginning to turn a shade of red. He says, Cory, those are nice words, but every chance I get, I'm going to put things on your schedule that reflect that. So it's nice to have somebody that handles your schedule.
And thank you, Senator.
Yeah, thank you.
So about Russia.
First of all, I will go to Russia and anywhere you want. You can ask me any questions you want whatsoever. But it's just really good to see so many people out here today. And I just want to thank you. I get upset sometimes. And anger is a constructive emotion. Hate is not. Vilification is not. A lot of very negativity we see in our culture, sort of arrogance of meanness, a sort of moral vandalism. But anger is not. And I often get upset that we pledge these oaths to be a nation of liberty and justice for all, but those are words. And to see people who are investing their time and money and doing things. So I just want to thank this organization for getting so many people out tonight about this. So thank you.
I mean, I have to say, this is not about me, but one reason that I joined the board of SMYAL is that I saw all kinds of issues that I felt unable to do anything about, and I saw SMYAL actually doing something about issues that were happening all around me and having a real impact on a community that I live in. And so that was one reason that I first became involved in this organization.
But I do believe that there is this sense of overwhelm people get sometimes, and they don't know how to make a change. But I always challenge people. I said, whatever issue you were upset about, there's somebody somewhere in this country doing incredible things about it. And we often don't know, but we need to invest that energy. And so I'm this guy, again, I criticize myself the most, because sometimes I get about our world, I get caught up when I call a state of sedentary agitation. When you're so upset about, I'm sitting at home at night, like watching Rachel, and I'm getting all upset that wonderful lesbian woman gets me all upset. And she's actually my college classmate, and I'm like, somebody should do something about this. And I forget that I am somebody.
But, any one of us can make a donation to SMYAL,
right,
or join the board of an organization.
Right.
But as one of 100 senators, there is a lot of paralysis.
Right. And can I call BS on you for a second?
Absolutely.
And just call you out for being I'm sorry, be nice.
We're not on the radio.
No, I love you. I'm being filmed here, though. That's why I said BS.
That's very appropriate.
Bull salami. No, I mean, when has change, honestly, significant change in this country ever come from Washington? Do you think?
Well, then why are you in Washington?
I'll tell you why. Hold on a second. Cool your jets. I feel like I'm in a committee hearing right now, and I'm the witness. And you're like Elizabeth Warren. Calm down. Okay? Give it up for Elizabeth. But this is just like, there wasn't a bunch of men in Washington who were sitting around saying, you know what, it's about time those women have some rights to vote. It wasn't like Strom Thurmond didn't one day wake up and say, yep, I'm going to give those Negro people some civil rights. That has never been the case. It's always folk bringing the change to Washington. And so I just know in our history, again, I miss Obama. I really miss Obama, and I miss her husband too.
First time you ever used that line,
yes,
right?
Yeah, it's the very first time. Virgin line. But the reality is he was a president that had to evolve on these issues. I remember, I was sitting in the mayor of Newark and like refused to conduct. I made this announcement: I will not marry people. Mayors can do that. Not marry people until everyone can get married. It's outrageous. My mom calls me up so upset. She's like, son, please marry one person. I just want you to get married. I want to have grandchildren. But I raised the pride flag when I got married. It was first married in 2006, and I got hate calls, and they weren't anonymous hate calls. They were people telling me exactly who they were and that they would never vote or support me. But my party was failing to show leadership. And so why did Obama step out? Why did Biden step out? I don't know their hearts, and they can talk for themselves. But I know that the people were the ones that pulled the politicians along on LGBTQ issues. And so I just have to say, like, I agree with you. You could question me as a United States Senator, why did I run for office? Why am I where you are? But I think that the strength, Alice Walker said it's the most common way people give up their power is not realizing they have it in the first place. And so here I am, a United States Senator, and I'm proud. I try to stay rooted to what got me in the game. I'm the only United States Senator that lives in a low-income community. My community is rich with spirit, a wealth of culture, just incredible people I live with. But the median income where I live in this inner city is $14,000 per household, according to the last census. And I'm sorry, but every issue that we talk about, it affects poor people worse. And so you have the LGBTQ youth of color, the violence against transgender Americans of color, the murders of transgender people of color, and poor people, frankly, it's outrageous. So I'm rooted in this community every single day. And I tell you, I've met incredible human beings, but the greatest heroes I've met, the people that have taught me the most, I say I got my BA from Stanford, but my PhD in the streets of Newark, because I see the greatest heroes are the people that live in my neighborhood and my community who've taught me so much. And so I feel this obligation to be a senator, and why I ran for Senate, because of course I wanted to work on issues, and I thought I could bring a lot of change, and I had a lot to offer. But I also knew that, I could bring, first of all, I'm the fourth popularly elected African-American senator in the history of the United States. I really felt like if I stayed rooted in where I was, that I could go in and bring different voices and a different urgency, but often a reminder that as divided our country is right now, it's to people that, hey, we have a common pain and we need to get back to a sense of common purpose. And that you cannot subjugate or oppress or hate on one group without hurting the whole. And this is the message I've tried to carry. But I know right now with Kavanaugh, I don't know if you all heard, there's a Supreme Court justice.
Well, I was going to say, you talk about change coming from the ground up, but
Yes.
the biggest change in LGBT rights in the last decade came from 5 people sitting on the Supreme Court.
No, but that's like saying that the biggest change for African Americans came from Brown versus Board of Education. No, I'm telling you that the Supreme Court had just ruled a little while ago on Plessy, a little while before that on Plessy versus Ferguson. Why did the courts change? Because the community changed and demanded and fought. And so the same Supreme Court that we celebrate for Obergefell is the Supreme Court that that made decisions about making certain sexual behavior illegal. And so I really do believe we got to Obergefell because of the larger growth in our community, the evolution of our country towards its ideals of liberty and justice for not some, not straight people, not black men, but all people.
Well, that almost suggests that it doesn't matter who's on the court as long as people
Oh,
shout
God,
loudly enough or
no,
campaign hard
no,
enough or tell their
no.
stories.
First of all, God, no. I think of what's at stake right now in these next few months, that if Kavanaugh gets confirmed, we know who he is on a right for a woman to control her own body. We know who he is on health care and the ability to preserve the Affordable Care Act and prevent pre-existing conditions from coming back to preventing people from getting health care. We know where he is on the ascendancy in this country of corporate power, throwing us back to the days of monopolistic power where corporations run sway. Now,
And how much can Democrats actually do?
so I'm going to tell you this right now. I heard the same thing around the healthcare debate, and I felt the same sense of this, like
You mean the repeal debate?
the repeal and replace. They had everything. They controlled the rules, the procedure. They controlled the majorities in both houses. They controlled even the Senate. They showed their willingness to erode Senate norms to get what they wanted on healthcare. And so why did that not happen? But it wasn't me. I fought hard. I did everything. It was because the people in this country showed up. And when I mean that, I mean quite literally, we're the little lobbyists, these amazing children who are also in wheelchairs, showing up, protests. Senators couldn't go home without getting people to confront that.
Given that Donald Trump is the president and is going to nominate whoever takes the Kennedy seat in the Supreme Court, do you think there's an argument that Democrats should be happy to get somebody who's an experienced jurist and not like a Fox News personality?
How the standards have shifted in the United States of America, that we should, hallelujah, we've got a radical
Kavanaugh
right-wing
is
judge.
the kind of person who you could imagine pretty much any Republican president of the last 20 years nominating.
Okay,
right?
So first of all, I would actually beg to differ. I think that what we're doing to our courts right now is that you are having extremist judges on the right who would not have made it. Bork didn't make it. This is not normal. It's becoming the new normal to have people. I mean, this was a selection process that's outsourced to the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Imagine some Democrats said, I'm going to let ACLU give me a list, and I'm going to pick from that list. You would have the.
But I guess I'm asking, practically speaking, if Democrats defeat Kavanaugh, who's Plan B?
Hold on. That's obviously a good response to
The midterms was the one response. Yeah.
But I think it's more. You do never surrender a moment when you have the nation, what I call it, a moral moment. And to sit back and say, this is the best we can get, and not object to someone who is going to roll back the litany of things that I talked about, that is going to change American society, that is going to undermine things that are going way against the popular grain of even what Republicans want. And not only do I think we can stop this, but I think we have to see a moral obligation to do so, to stand up and let our voices be heard, as opposed to saying, and what I think is more cynicism than anything, to say, hey, this is not something, this is the best we can get. You never know what's going to happen. I saw this when the Republicans did it. There was Republicans arguing, wait a minute, why aren't you going to vote on Merrick Garland? I mean, God, this guy's a conservative. Hatch was saying, before Obama picked him, that Hatch was saying Obama's not going to pick
be so lucky as to get Garland.
Somebody like Garland. And then Obama picks him, and people that were arguing with the Republican strategies in the Republican camp, and they were like, no, we're going to break rules, end norms, change traditions, because you never know what's going to happen the next day.
We've only got about 5 minutes left, and I do want to ask you about Russia.
Okay. I know everybody came here to talk about Russia.
I mean, the thing is, usually on All Things Considered, I have 5 minutes to ask a senator about the thing we're supposed to talk about that day. I get to talk about whatever I want right now.
That is very true.
And so the question that I would love to hear your frank answer to is,
yes,
what's your theory of the case?
So I just came out of a 3+ hour hearing with Pompeo today.
Who it sounds like doesn't know what happened in that room in Helsinki.
He refused to give us a straight answer of what happened. And by the way, this was not the only. First of all, he's had no other meeting with anybody in the G20 in a secretive way.
Trump has
not had any other meetings with the G20. Every other world leader he meets with, there are people in the room taking notes, seeing what's happened, so on and so forth. But remember, this isn't even the first pull-aside he had with Putin.
With Putin, yeah.
He had at a G20 meeting, he actually had a pull-aside on the side. Caught his staff by shock, and then he didn't know well enough not to talk about what he talked about. So people asked what they talked about, and he said adoptions, which is the code word
for the Magnitsky Act.
For the Magnitsky Act and for sanctions.
Right.
Which is the very meeting that has caused them a lot of trouble, where Kushner, Manafort, and others met with a Russian agent around the relaxing of sanctions. So he was asked multiple times today, did they talk about the relaxing of sanctions? When most of us, rarely do you get bipartisan agreement of this guy, think there should be more sanctions, not less. Where he had people going out, like Nikki Haley, saying, hey, we're going to put more sanctions on, and then the president deciding not to put them on.
But I've heard people theorize that there's blackmail material, a compromise against Trump. I've heard people theorize that this is just a guy who likes strongmen and admires Putin. There are a lot of different theories out there about why President Trump behaves towards Putin and Russia the way he does. What's your theory?
So, look, Bill Bradley gave me really good advice before I came to the United States Senate. And it is, and I had a moment today, which was actually really remarkable to me, which is never question the motives of an individual. Like, don't try to get in the head of your Senate colleagues. Deal with people on the facts that are before you. And I actually think that that's really productive. We've come to a point in American society where we are reflexively vilifying people and their intentions and their morals and their values and so on and so forth. I talk about moral moments, I talk about things, but I try, occasionally I've made mistakes, not to vilify a human being. And this happening on the floor of the Senate today, I was so shocked because I had given a speech against Kavanaugh talking about the evil of poverty, the evil of and this, the only thing necessary for evil to be triumphant is good people to do nothing. This is sort of the theory of my speech. But a line was pulled out by conservative media to make it sound like I was saying Kavanaugh is evil. And now it's going all across conservative radio. And I had this shocking moment on the Senate floor to me today. And I apologize for saying shocking, maybe I shouldn't, where Senator Cotton,
Tom Cotton of Arkansas,
who
Republican.
is a guy that's really far out there on the right wing, comes up to me on the floor and said, I was on conservative radio today, and he said, I was defending you. I was saying that I know Cory Booker. This quote out of context in the speech doesn't sound like Cory Booker I know. I go around giving speeches about these issues, and he extended me the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going to get back to Trump for a second, but I just really got to get this off my chest because everybody looks at what's going on outside of them, and I think we need to be a country that you have a choice to make in every moment to accept things as they are, take responsibility for changing them. If one of the things we talk about is the brokenness of Washington, I was raised to think of 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. And we've gotten to a point in society where the tribalism is becoming so deep that we are losing the American ideal, which is love. Patriotism is love of country. You can't love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. We don't have to like each other, agree with each other, but love says, I see you, whether you're an LGBTQ youth, whether you're an African-American kid, whether you're a single mom struggling to make it in a factory town and can't afford rent. I see you. I see your worth. I see your dignity. I see your value. In fact, I know I need you because there's only one destiny, an American destiny. The old African saying says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now, we're at a point now where love is no longer the standard. It's tolerance. Like, let's be a society of tolerance. Go home and tell one of your loved ones tonight, I tolerate you. I mean, it's like ridiculous that's now the American standard. When our founders wrote, we must mutually pledge, to each other, our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. And we've gone from that ideal, pledging that to each other, to tolerating each other. That says I'm no better or worse off if you disappear off the face of the earth, because I'm just tolerating you. And this has become so bad. I was telling this to John Cornyn on the Senate floor, who called me, one of the people who did call me out for taking that statement out of context. And he says, I say to him, I told him, I tell, in my speeches, John, this is who I am. Even to people that are my base, Democrats, I tell the story of the two hugs. And I think I got a strange look for him about, you're going to talk to me about hugs? And the two hugs I said is, one is Chris Christie, governor of my state. I could write a dissertation on my disagreements with Chris Christie, vehemently, but we're friends. Because he was the governor of the state, I was mayor of the largest city. We could have chose just to bang like this all the time. And we are both big guys, that's a lot of banging. But we decided we would find common ground. And what can we agree on? Long story short is, I'm watching the Republican primaries, hug number one, watching the Republican primary, presidential primary debates. And Chris Christie is getting pilloried by his opponents. They had commercials out against him for the sin of hugging Barack Obama. And the hug, for those of you who don't know what the hug was, it was after Hurricane Sandy and Air Force One flew in and Obama goes down the steps. We were grieving in our state, many lives lost, thousands of homes lost, and the two men hugged at the bottom of the stairs. Now, I'm a hugger, so as I walk out, be careful. I'm a hugger, and that's not even a good hug. It was one of those awkward, male hugs where you're just not sure what to do with your hands and all of that. Hug number two is me. I'm on the Senate floor. John McCain comes to the floor after getting a cancer diagnosis. I cross the aisle in front of the C-SPAN cameras, so maybe 12 people saw me. 13 if you include my mom. Big C-SPAN watcher now, there are sons in the Senate. And I give him a bear hug. I'm talking about a real hug. Like, come in here. Come in for the big one. And by the time I get home, I'm getting pilloried on Twitter by people on my side of the aisle for hugging John McCain. And so here we are in this national moment, this national debate. But we, as individuals, I see it on social media, how we seem to have license to say things about other people, to go to the core of their humanity, as opposed to talking about their behavior or what they're doing. So what's my theory of the case? I don't need to go to Donald Trump's whatever's I don't want to descend and try to find out what's going on in Donald Trump's head. This is what I do know. I'm going to ferociously, in the way that Reagan would have. We have been attacked by the Russians. They're trying to undermine Western democracy. And I'm going to do everything I can as a senator based upon the fact pattern I know and attacking that fact pattern. But this is what the Russians are trying to do, ultimately. They're trying to destroy the freedoms of Western democracy. They're trying to attack our values. And Putin loves it. I may be able to tell you, I can't tell you classified information, but trust me, loves it when we're at each other's throats and is working hard using his continued cyber attacks to try to insinuate divisions between us. The more we're divided against each other as a society, the worse it is. It goes back to the lesson of the city of Jerusalem in the year 69, not the year I was born, 1969, Jerusalem in the year 69, when it was under attack by the Romans and they couldn't take the city. And Josephus, some of you who know your early Christian writings, Josephus advises the Romans to pull back their siege. They pull back their siege and they wait, and their divisions, fights start inside Jerusalem. Literally, they're burning each other's food stock. Unbelievable factions were breaking out, and the Russians came and took the city of Jerusalem with ease. It's the city.
Russians?
Screw you,
Good
man.
flip.
The Romans take it with ease. And it screams for a historical imperative. It's true. It's true for a community. It's true for a city. It's true for people. It's true for a nation, especially. If there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm. And the enemy within, ultimately for the United States of America, will be those things that stop us from coming together and joining together in common purpose larger than us. And so I will not let Donald Trump ever pull me so low as to hate him, because then I'm becoming the exact same thing that I'm decrying. I'm going to try, and it's hard. I still told my staff saw me upset one day because I called Donald Trump a liar. And I was upset at myself because I should say he's lying repeatedly, often, weekly, but I don't want to pass judgment on who he is. Now, this is a crazy standard, but you must be the change you want to see in this world. And so allow me to end with this. I'm sorry, it sounds like a filibuster. And it is. But I do want to end with this call. And it's just a simple little story. Call it a confession of a vegan. How do you know somebody's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. And by the way, I'm a vegan. And when I'm home in Newark, when I'm doing city stuff, or senatorial type stuff, I got a guy that drives me around. And he's a cop from Newark, grew up in the project, served in the military, came back, joined the police department. When I became mayor, he was on my security detail. After I went senator, 7, 8 years later, he joins my Senate staff. He knows me. It's 20 years we've almost worked together. And he knows me so well that when we're driving home, there's these terrible places. I don't know if you have them in your communities, horrible places. Like, I was like Odysseus coming home, and they're like the sirens calling you to your demise. They're called fast food restaurants. Mm-hmm. And I'm driving home, and there's this McDonald's 3 blocks from where I live, and he looks at me, because he knows, he's looking at me in the rearview mirror, and in shame, I go, and we go. Now, I don't walk into McDonald's. Why? Because I'm a vegan.
Right.
I decided to go through the drive-thru. And I sink down in my seat. I disguise my voice. Hi, I'd like some 2 large French fries, please. And they hand me these things. Now, I am the premier senator. I have the premier bill for descheduling marijuana, because it is not it's not a Schedule 1 drug. It should be, but McDonald's French fries should be scheduled. Because these things come through, and the aroma, I'm holding these things tight in sort of an unhealthy way. And I'm saying like I'm from some Lord of the Rings movie, my precious. And I'm ready to go home, unbuckle my pants, sit on my couch, and watch TV. I might even had invited my friend Ben and Jerry to join me. Ben and Jerry, vegan Ben and Jerry flavor, by the
Sure,
way.
sorbet or
So
something,
they have
I
the
don't know.
good vegan, but then I see a guy in the dumpster, a guy in the trash can rooting around. And I stop and I say, hey man, do you need anything? He tries to brush me off and I go, hey man, are you okay? Do you need anything? He turns around and he says, I'm hungry. Now and I'm a big believer, I always say, before you tell me about your religion, first show it to me and how you treat other people. And so this is one of those moments, and I think about, for me as a Christian, I think about the Bible. I think Jesus said something like Sermon on the Mount. Like he might have said, if you have 2 McDonald's French fries and your neighbor has none, I think you're supposed to like give your McDonald's.
Definitely.
I think it was the sermon of, I think the Saint McDonald or somebody like that. So I reach in, my hand's shaking now because I'm giving away something that I am coveting. And he comes over, he takes the fries, and I feel somewhat good about myself, but he looks appreciative. And then he says to me, hey man, do you have any socks? Now, for those of us who've done work with homeless folks, you know, often one of the most sought after clothing, it's just socks. And I thought to myself, I look at him and I go, sorry, man, I'm looking around my car, I don't have any socks. And so I'm about to roll up the window, he's about to turn around a little disappointed. And then Kevin Batts, this guy, throws a car in park, reaches between his legs and pulls off the socks he's wearing and gives them out the window. And here I am, this guy that talks about love and kindness, but in that moment, an everyday American moment, I didn't think, I'm 3 blocks from my house, I have pairs of socks at home that I don't even wear. And so I'm running around the country criticizing or calling out these things, but how much in my own life am I willing to make the change? Because the flip side of this story is this continued things that haunt me. I'm very serious. Like in the lobby, when I lived in the project, the lobby of the building, there was these kids that hung out. You know, one of them was just like my dad. He was born below the poverty line. Just like my dad, he was raised by his grandma for a while. Just like my dad, he lived in a segregated community. We are a segregated country still. And I remember going home one night and I smelled something. I only smelled it in Stanford's campus this pungently, marijuana. And I knew that we have legalized marijuana in this country for privilege, for people. There's no raids at Stanford. 3 of the last 4 presidents admitted to doing things that their kids in prison right now for doing. And I knew that these kids, inner city Newark, don't have the chance. So I started trying to take them out, whatever, have fun. I asked them to go to the movies with me, choose the movie. It was a mistake. They chose, I thought it was a home improvement movie called Saw. And these are young kids. But then I get busy. Why? Because of politics. I'm running for mayor. I get busy. I'm running for mayor. I'm running this big job. I'm going to help all the kids. And they were so good to me. I'd still come home late at night and never followed through on all the things I said I was going to do with them. But they still cheered me on. I remember one night they were going to vote for you, Cory. We're going to vote for you. And you know what? They were 17. They couldn't vote for me. I get elected. There's death threats on my life. And the kids there didn't hang out. Hassan Washington, the kid around my dad, they didn't hang out because they're police officers now for trying to protect me. But I don't care. I'm running around the city. I'm the newly elected mayor, newly sworn in, and I'm going to shootings. There's lots still in America. Most people don't realize hundreds of people shot every week in this country, and many of them in urban communities like mine. And I go to this one street corner. I'm only in office a month, and a kid's covered over by a tarp. Another one's being loaded into the ambulance, rushed off the hospital. And I barely acknowledge the humanity on the floor. And I'm running around talking to people and you know, just telling people this is Newark. I'm giving street level sermons to the people crowded around. I go home that night for catch a few hours of sleep, and I'm looking through my BlackBerry about the reports. And there I see it. The name of the kid that was killed, the name of the kid on that sheet, his name was Hassan Washington. And we're here for a youth organization. And we could decry national politics. But, you know, for me, I'll never forget this funeral I go to for another dead youth in this country. And it was Perry's Funeral Home in the Central Ward of Newark, New Jersey. And it's just an unnatural place. Sometimes I go there for funerals. I buried recently, I went to my pastor's 103-year-old mother, passed away, beautiful. But this now, I'm going to this funeral home all on one floor, and I got to go to the one room in the basement. And here I am descending, the newly minted mayor, walking down these narrow staircase, and it felt like I was descending into the hull of a ship. And there we were, piled in, stacked on top of each other, chained together in in grief, moaning and swaying for another dead boy in a box. And I'm now the mayor. I've got that title. I'm the father of the city, but I felt small and weak. I felt shame, and people were coming over to me, and I'm leaning on them for comfort. And eventually, Kevin Batts was the guy that was there. I turn to him and I say, I gotta go. And I run. I'm not exaggerating. I run up those steps into my brand new mayoral SUV, go to City Hall. I don't take the elevator because I don't want to look anybody in the eye. I run up the steps into my new office, slam the door, and I start crying for the first time ever as mayor. Because I thought to myself, all of us were there for this kid's death, but where were we for his life? And what does it make a difference for one child? My dad, born poor to a single mother, couldn't take care of him. Grandma then, she couldn't take care of him. People in a community brought one child in, put food over his head, put roof over his head, food on the table. No college in my family, no vision of college, my dad would tell me. People started insisting you're gonna go to college. He just thought it was fancy, but he got good enough grades. Then when it was time to go, he was gonna go out and work, but they said, you're gonna go to college. They took a church collection, just a little bit of money back in those days, enough money to enroll in North Carolina Central. He went to this broke traditions in my family. Now he's a college student, and guess what? He's witness to the Civil Rights Movement in 1961 when he was in college. The sit-in movement starts there in North Carolina. And he says for him, white people and black people, Christians and Jews, showing up and taking physical abuse for him. He comes here to Washington, D.C., newly college graduate, and it was people in this city at a time they weren't hiring blacks. We all come, everybody here, they wouldn't hire gays at one point. They wouldn't hire Catholics, Irish, women. This was a time they weren't hiring blacks, corporations, and people here fought for him. It wasn't just because he was talented, it was because other people opened doors for one person. He gets his first job as a first black salesman for a company. Then he becomes IBM's first black salesman in the entire Virginia region, and it's not over yet. Then he goes to move to New Jersey and finds out in 1969 with this little baby, very big crier. I'm talking now, not then. They won't sell him homes in white communities with great public schools. And so it was people in an organization like this who say, we're gonna send white couples behind you. When you are told the house is sold, we're gonna show up. And my father found this one house he loved, the house I would grow up in. He was told it was sold. He leaves, white couple shows up, they pretend they love it, they put a bid on the house, the bid is accepted. Papers are drawn up on the day of the closing. The white couple doesn't show up. My dad does, and who? Look around this room. People like you all, some lawyers, one volunteer lawyer. They confront the real estate agent. Real estate agent doesn't get up. The real estate agent stands up and punches my dad in the face.
Wow.
Punches my dad's lawyer in the face, sticks a dog on my dad. A fight breaks out. And my dad, to the day, I'm telling you, every time my dad would tell me this story, the dog would get bigger. Eventually, he's like, son, I've had a pack of wolves. I fought a pack of wolves to get you in this house. Think of all these individuals. I'm not finished yet. I go to write my book as a senator. I got to go find these lawyers who changed my life. I look for the head of the Fair Housing Council from New Jersey. I find her. She is 92 years old.
Wow.
She's still the head of the Fair Housing Council. Now she's not representing black families. Guess who she's representing? She's a black woman. She's representing same-sex couples and Muslim families predominantly. She tells me it's just one justice. She says, find the lawyer who organized it all, find him. I thank God I did because he died 2 years later. And this is what he told me. One person, think about every one of you in this room changing the world. She says to me, find Arthur Lessman. I find this guy, I call him up. And what does he say? Why did he do this? I want to know his motivation. Why? And he goes, because he's this white guy sitting in his couch, comfortable home in Bergen County, just started his law firm, still not making enough money even to meet all the payments. He's working hard, but he's sitting home comfortably watching TV back when we had 3.5 channels. And they break away from the movie. He's watching the movie. What was the movie? Judgment at Nuremberg. America's watching this movie. They break away and they show something you couldn't even imagine. They show a bridge in Alabama called the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And he's watching people start marching from Selma to Montgomery. They get stopped on this bridge, And he says that, he goes, he's watching as they go to kneel and pray. John Lewis told me the story now. He goes, they were going to turn around. They said, let's pray first. They go to kneel and pray. And he says he's watching as they get gassed by Alabama state troopers, tear gas. And then they go in with billy clubs and start beating these people. This woman named Boynton knocked unconscious. A man named John Lewis, head opened up, blood that red. And he said he was so horrified that this is his country that he goes to work the next day, tells his partner Leo, we got to go to Alabama. Leo laughs, not because it's funny, but because it's preposterous that he could afford even a plane ticket to go. And they just sit there a little while. They don't get caught like me in that state of Rachel-induced sedentary agitation. They sit there and they think to themselves, well, why don't we just do the best we can with what we have where we are? And they start calling around to see who needs a lawyer. And they find this African-American woman named Liz Lee Porter that says, thank you, Jesus. And they start taking cases. 4 years later, they get a case file that says Cory and Carolyn Booker. Think of this chain reaction I just went through to lead me to the United States Senate. I would not be here if it wasn't for those folks who took a boy in, one child, and gave them a safe place to live, gave him a safe place. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those folks. What's the ROI on $1 in a collection plate, on a $1,000 contribution in this room? What's the ROI when it comes to the life of one of these beautiful kids that we saw come up here before? What's the ROI on those folks that helped a black kid get a job at a town that they wouldn't, or the folks that went on freedom rides, didn't even know my dad or my family? What's the ROI on someone to take a punch for me and my family that I never got a chance to say thank you to? What's the ROI on those people on that bridge who failed that day, failed, but because they stood up for love, they unleashed an energy into the universe that instantaneously leapt 1,000 miles and changed the heart of one guy on a couch who would then go on and change a generation not yet born yet. And so I'm angry right now. Transgender rights in the military. I'm angry right now. A Secretary of State that won't defend the rights of bullied LGBTQ kids. I'm so hurting right now by what could happen to civil rights and voting rights and women's rights if this man gets on the Supreme Court. But I have learned from people far greater than me, far humbler than me, that don't have my title or my position or my paycheck, that what real hope is not some external sign, somebody that pats you on the back and says everything's going to be okay and explains why. No, hope is the active conviction that despair won't have the last word. And that I may be just one person, but I am a person. And this nation is what it is, not because of the people's names we read in history books, but because of ordinary Americans in the most difficult time that stood up and did extraordinary things. And most often they've been small acts of kindness that are barely even noticed. We forget that the biggest thing we can do in any day is most often going to be a small act of kindness. And so, yeah, I got a lot of things on my plate, but why is it important to be here? Because in my country, kids are dying. They're being beaten, they're being bullied. And they're beautiful and they're glorious. And I've turned my back on kids before. I made a mistake with Hassan Washington. I wasn't like the people were to my dad. But this organization and what you do every day, for me, it's redemption. Not just to people like me who made mistakes and let kids slip, but you're the redemption for our country right now. And that's not a hyperbolic word, because every child you help, every child you support, every child that you see their beauty, their glory, their dignity, and that you give a little help to manifest that, every one of those children can change this country forever. And as we saw, one person can change the destiny for generations yet unborn. Filibuster over. Thank you.